Hello, and welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show. Again, this is Ray Walters. Deployments can be some of the most challenging seasons for military families, testing resilience, stretching emotions, and reshaping relationships. While service members prepare for their missions, spouses and children navigate an emotional cycle of anticipation, separation, and reintegration, often with little guidance on how to cope effectively. Today's guest understands this firsthand. As a licensed professional counselor and a military spouse of 16 years, she has lived through multiple deployments, frequent relocations, and the emotional highs and lows that come with military life. Her experience, combined with her work in mental health, have given her unique insight into the struggles military families face and the tools they need to navigate them. She has worked with military families across different states, supported individuals dealing with trauma, and now runs her own counseling practice, helping others build resilience and maintain strong relationships. Her new book, The Emotional Cycle of Development, offers a deeply personal yet practical guide to understanding and overcoming the challenges of military separations. Please welcome to the Author Roundup, Allison Bratton. Hi, Allison. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Well, Allison, congratulations in getting this book published through Balboa Press. This came out, was it November of last year or December?
November.
November of last year. How has it been now that you finally have a book?
I'm so excited and grateful for this opportunity. It has been amazing. I'm just to reach all of the spouses and talk and work with all of the military that my book has been able to reach. It's been able to go much further than just one voice can, because the book is published everywhere.
Yeah, and that's what makes, I believe that's what makes this conversation very interesting because of what we're going to talk about. Now, let me go ahead and jump right in to my first question to you. So, I want to get to know you. We want to get to know you. Your personal journey as a military spouse and a counselor deeply informs this book. What was the moment of experience that convinced you this book needed to be written?
This book started as really a personal journey, a personal journal of the different things that I had gone through to help me process, to help me deal with it. As I became a counselor, I started to help other military spouses go through it, and I started to realize that a lot of the coping skills and the realizations that I had, they didn't have. So I really wanted to create something easy that spouses or family members can pick up, read in 1 or 2 sessions, have some stories, some skills, really become enveloped in the book and walk away feeling like they have a handle on things. Like they know what their next steps are.
It's going to be deployments are usually tough, and there are a lot of parties that gets affected. We're talking about the spouse getting deployed, the spouse of the servicemen, and also the kids. Now, Allison, I want to first look into the foundational concept of the book from the start. So my next question to you is, early in your book, you describe the emotional cycle of a deployment. How did you first come to recognize this cycle, and why is it so critical for military families to understand?
Well, a cycle is any repeated process, same steps over and over. I'd like to say that I invented it, but I didn't. Its emotional cycle of deployment has been out there for years, but it's not talked about. There's not a lot of information about on it. And there's a few spouses that have internet sites, and I've listed them in my books, but and you can always go and get their information, but really it's not talked about.
Right.
So I noticed that you go through these changes, through these stages. Then I learned about the stages, and I realized that the information is really difficult to find, and I want
Right.
to make it more available. I want to get it in everybody's hands so
Right.
that they know what it's going to look like through each stage.
And that's a good thing. I know it's on a case by case basis. There's this entire unique setting that not every families that goes through this kind of a setting or setup would usually experience. But it's a good thing that you have practical insights that you can share that are very common. And sometimes we feel that because they're so common, we overlook them and we don't, but the impact of these are actually really big. And sometimes we just think that it's not. So my next question for you, Allison, is let's look into the pre-deployment buildup. In the pre-deployment phase, families often experience heightened stress and anxiety. What advice do you give to families preparing for this stage?
Really to be okay with change and to focus on the now, because you'll hear, okay, we're deploying at this time, or we're getting ready to move at this time, and we're going to this place, and then right before it happens, it changes, or the something will happen with the movers. So what I really tell people is focus on the day, be prepared for change, because you will make it through. Make sure that you have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and D plus B will end up being what it is.
Right.
But just be prepared for the array of different results that can happen.
Right. And that's a good thing about you sharing your experiences in your book, because, again, as I've said earlier, there are things during the pre-deployment stage that we tend to overlook that we thought it's not as crucial or important. Can you give us a scenario, Allison, based on your experience when we talk about pre-deployment that you thought was not crucial, but then again, it made an impact as you move through the entire process?
So one of the things that people really don't think about is when they hear, okay, their service member is going to deploy and they're preparing for this big deployment. Well, for about a year, 6 months before the deployment, they're working up to that big deployment. So that doesn't mean that the service member gets extra time with the family or gets to support the family. That normally means that they're doing training, whatever you want to call it, depending on, again, what branch you're in, training exercises, recertifications. They're going away for these little stints. So in the book, I talk about like a 6 to 12 month deployment, and then they have 6 to 12 months of workups. So in the workups, it starts out like they'll be gone for 3 weeks and they're home for a week. Then they're gone for 4 weeks and they're home for a week. Then 5 weeks and a week, and 6 weeks and a week. So it's really disruptive to the family unit. Like you get
Right.
doing things on your own.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, dad's home for a few days. Dad or mom is home for a few days. They might be able to do a few things, but you can't get used to their help. Really taxing.
And that's the part of the story that most of people like myself do not see. You know what happens behind the scenes. So let's talk about coping with deployment. Allison, we talked about pre-deployment, but once deployment begins, the sense of separation can be overwhelming. What are some strategies you've found most effective for families to stay connected and maintain emotional stability during this period?
And so and this is a really all these questions are super loaded because I'm talking about like families through the stages, right? So you'll start and it's just the spouse and their service member. Then they have kids. So then we have kids in the mix and the kids throughout their stages. So some of the things that I recommend for spouse when you have time and you're not working and you're like, what am I going to do? I don't have, I have I have an abundance of time. I don't have family. I don't have support. Find a hobby, get a job, volunteer, get outside of yourself. You are going to experience grief, but know that you're experiencing that grief. And it's different than if you lost a spouse and they were never coming back. It's a different type of grief. And one important thing is it changes with each deployment. So at the beginning, it was really like heartbreaking and heart-wrenching, and it felt like the worst breakup ever. And I say breakup because it's really common for the relationship, the spouse and their partner to fight right beforehand because it's a lot easier to separate and to leave if you're on bad terms than it is if you're on good terms. So a lot of people really have a hard time with that. They don't understand it until they do. Once they get it, it just makes sense and it's just part of the process.
I may not completely understand that feeling, but I think I'm getting where some of these people are coming from when you said that it's easier for them in the deployment process that they have this big fight before the deployment because it's easier for them to send the husband off or the service member off. But you mentioned children a while back. So we've already talked about the experience that a spouse would usually go through. Let's look into the role of the kids. You devote a section of your book to the unique challenges faced by children during deployments. How can parents best support their kids through the ups and downs of this process?
So really, really listen to them, observe them. When they don't have the language, look at their behaviors. Are they regressing? Are they crying? Are they being cranky? They're not like we'll see a crying 2-year-old and you go through the steps. Like, are they hungry? Is their diaper wet? Is it this? Is it that? And you go through all the steps and it's not those and you're really aggravated and you're like, what is going on? It's because they miss their other family member that is just suddenly gone because they don't understand. And then even when they develop language and they're in middle school and then they're in high school, they understand, but their subconscious conscience doesn't really understand. It's not any easier. And it's not a choice, but it's to the kids it feels like a choice. So to the children, they internalize it as this family member is leaving me.
Right.
So there's a lot of abandonment because they don't understand. They can't understand yet.
Allison, you've experienced this yourself. I know I did ask you a question pre-interview about your experience, and you said that you moved to different states, and when your husband was deployed overseas to Italy in Sicily, that was the time you gave birth, right? Or was your kid at that time 4 years old? I
No,
recall.
he was born in Italy.
He
It
was
was in
born in Italy.
2004. So there's the
Yeah.
4.
And imagining Sicily is a beautiful place, but you've witnessed it yourself. You have a husband that gets deployed and you have kids. What did you observe from giving birth to them growing up? What did you observe in them?
I've actually talked about this a lot with my kids. They are older now. Today they are 19, 14, and 10, and they've developed so much resiliency. So my husband retired after 20 years in 2019. So we've lived in Oregon for about 6 years. And they've been able to notice that a lot of the kids like have not had the chances to see the world, to get out like they have. So they have this wider perspective that it's not just what's happening in our bubble, things happen globally.
Mhm.
So they really understood that relationship, and they have a smaller group of friends. It's more intimate. They would make friends wherever we are, and then they would play Xbox with them.
Mhm.
So wherever we moved, they were still able to keep that connection and talk with that friend or visit or send phone messages to that friend. So that was something that was really important, keeping that connection, because it is very isolating when you're moving all the time. My 18-year-old went to 8 different schools when he was in elementary school.
That's a tough one. The role of the parent there, I want to go back, step back, because that's not easy. You have your own emotions that you need to process, and you have your kids that you need to support. How do you juggle?
You have to put a lot of thought into the routine that you want to maintain while your spouse is deployed. So when your spouse is at home and you're working as a team and you're their most important thing, it's
Mhm.
easier to feel more supported, for your kids to feel more supported, to have a full-time job and do sports and have a parent at each thing. But when they're gone, it's a lot harder. So making a list of the routines that are important to you so that you can keep those for you and for your spouse. Things are going to change, but to what degree?
Right, right. Well, in your book, you emphasize the importance of community for family, military families. What advice would you give to someone who feels isolated and unsure of how to build that support network, especially those who are like yourself, would move from different places? It could be within the US mainland or overseas.
So if sometimes living on base is amazing, if you can develop that relationship with your other spouses, the
Mhm.
people who are also like their spouse is in the command or their loved one is in the command, or just at that base doing the same type of job or something similar. They're in the military culture also.
Mhm.
If you're not on base, find that community. There's so many Facebook groups now that you can become a part of. Facebook is amazing. When we started, we didn't have that. We were still doing snail mail. So just building your network and staying in the know, but you have to be mindful of OPSEC. That's the
Okay.
operational security. So whatever you say, you have to be prepared for people to take it apart and use the bits and pieces as like breadcrumbs to figure out what's happening. So
Right.
even though like it might not seem important to you, it is important to the internet trolls and to the people who are trying to figure out where is this deployment going and what are they doing.
Right. Right. True. True.
So that's not information that just normal people who don't have a military connection are aware of.
Right.
And
And
your family can get really upset because they feel like you're not sharing your life or pieces of information because they want more than you know or are able to give.
right, true. And I understand. I now understand based on what you've said. We've talked about pre-deployment, the role of parents. We've talked about the effects on the children. We talked about looking for communities wherever you are stationed or deployed, especially if you are with your husband or with the service member. Let's talk now about the reintegration phase after deployment. I know this can be difficult. I can only say it can be difficult, but I don't really have a concrete idea of that. So, what do you recommend to families as they transition back into everyday life together?
So, with the Fleet and Family Service Center, that's what the Navy has. They have an FRG. The FRG stands for Fleet Readiness Group.
Mhm.
They prepare seminars to help the spouses get ready for their service member to come back. And the seminars will cover all sorts of things that are really important, like what to expect, what
Mhm.
your expectation is, and what reality could look like. We don't know what they're coming back from, but a lot of the times they are exhausted and they just want to do nothing. The
Mm.
spouse is super excited and plans all of these things, and let's go to Disneyland because we haven't been able to go to Disneyland. I've been waiting for the other half, my service member, to take the kids to Disneyland. It's going to be super exciting. To the service member returning, that is the worst nightmare. I did that one, so I know it was his worst nightmare. They just want to hang out. Intimacy is going to look really different. You have to reconnect. You have to rebuild that relationship, rebuild that trust. Lots of times, the person that left is not the person who returns.
I understand that part. And I'm trying to picture out what you've described. And now I understand that there could probably be experiences where they were deployed that, God forbid, could be traumatic, something that would really test them, that made them become a different version of themselves.
Just the hypervigilance. They have to be so hypervigilant. And now we're going to go to Disneyland and we're going to wait in lines, and there's going to be a lot of uncertainty and strangers. And where's the way out? Where's that? You have to have catastrophe thinking for so
Mm.
it doesn't just turn off.
How about PTSD? I think that's the worst case, right? That's going to bring, I don't really know if I'm quite aware of how it works, but the way I see it and the way I've read articles about it, it does affect not only the person who's dealing with it, but the people around them. Regarding that, what's your take?
So PTSD a lot of the times is trauma memories. You have to,
Yeah.
from a professional standpoint, I've learned a lot about like where trauma memories are stored and why we tap into them the way that we do. Your thinking brain or your prefrontal cortex is not necessarily the part of your brain that is in charge of your emotions.
Mhm.
The part of your brain that's in charge of your emotions is the amygdala, like the
Right.
subconscious brain. Like once the PTSD, whatever it looks like, is turned on, it's like a light switch. They don't see anything else because they're not able to, because that part of their brain is what's lit up.
Right.
You have to do the distress tolerance skills, the DBT skills to learn how to reset your brain, to calm down your nervous system, to recenter your body so that you can turn on that thinking part of your brain again. Really hard to do. And it takes a lot of mindfulness. And the resources for people, let alone for the military, just is not there. People are doing the best that they can, and the best that they can is not necessarily enough.
And you've mentioned hypervigilance. That could be just a tip of the iceberg, especially if they're going through PTSD. From the perspective of someone who's, you have a spouse who's just dealing with it. What's your role there? How do you guide them? How do you identify that? Did it become a problem for you in the beginning, or did it take you a lot of time to understand that piece?
It took me a lot of time to understand that piece because it took my husband, it takes the service member a lot of time to understand that piece. If
Mm.
they don't know what's going on and if they don't have the words to tell you, it can be really difficult. You get to just assume, to think that it's all your fault. As people, we internalize things. We think that everything has to do with us.
Really?
If you come in the house and you are in a mood, or you slam a door or a shower curtain, it doesn't mean that I did anything. It means that you had a bad day. It's really hard not to internalize that sometimes.
Allison, Murphy's Law seems to be a recurring theme during deployments. Can you share? I would want for you to share your own Murphy's Law moments and how you managed to navigate it.
Murphy's Law. I was just looking to see, I didn't write down exactly what Murphy's Law means, but initially it means what can happen will happen. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative thing, but what you're not concentrating on can happen. Sometimes what you are fearing, it's a fear, so it can happen. Sometimes it's just overwhelming circumstances, things that are out of the norm, your computer not working. Or let's see, so one of my real life, okay, I have a lot of real life examples. I have some in my book. When we were stationed in Nevada, I would drive to Palm Springs, California, pretty often. That's where I was raised. I had a nice new car, 2 babies in the back seat, and I blew a tire in the middle of nowhere. I had to get out of the car, take out the directions. The kids are screaming. I'm unloading the trunk to try and get to the
spare tire
here and get it on. It was chaotic. I fixed the tire, got on the road, then I got pulled over for going too slow because I hadn't done it on the highway. And then another time I was driving with the kids, again, car seats. When you have car seats and it's just one adult going, you try to minimize stops, because if you have to stop, it's just a lot. You have to get everybody out of the car seats and keep hands and eyes on them, and it's a lot of work. So we were driving through LA on the 4th of July. My car was fine. I was in the fast lane, and all of a sudden it popped and went immediately hot and started smoking.
Right.
I made it over, got off the freeway safely, but then we waited 8 hours for roadside assistance. And the shop had my car for a week because it was some crazy piece that went to the radiator and like 3 other things that decided to pop. That's Murphy's Law. You can't. Right. There's nothing you could have done to prevent it. It just happened, and you have to roll with it.
True. And we all know there are situations we cannot control. Cliche as it may seem, but we can control ourselves. But the problem there, you mentioning the amygdala, our primitive brain, actually is our fight and flight brain that gives us these emotions. And if we're not going to check these emotions, we're going to be mentally hijacked by these. And that's just a fact of life. There are things that can go outside of your control. You've already mentioned this, Allison. You brushed on this a couple of moments back. You talked about mindfulness and coping tools. I want to go a little deeper into that. Your appendix, the appendix that's on your book, includes mindfulness exercises and practical techniques for stress management. Which of these tools do you think has the most immediate impact on families, and why?
So, show you at the back of the book, I have a bunch of little mindfulness techniques that I use on a daily basis. The one that I like the most, that I teach a lot of adults to use, that I actually got it from and developed it from a children's book. So it was kind of a compilation of all of it. It's called the starfish breathing. It works so well because it's tactile and it's getting you to breathe. So You'd be sitting down in a chair, eyes closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths. Your hand is your starfish. So you trace the outside of your hand while you're breathing. So I teach people fives because it's easier to remember five. So I teach five counts in. So
Okay.
hold for five and five out, like you're blowing up a balloon. So you
Yeah.
do that. Five in, hold for five, five out. By the time you get to your third or your fourth finger, you can lower your shoulders. You get that nice cleansing deep breath. That cleansing deep breath lets you know that your thinking brain is coming back on. And that's really important.
Right. Sure. It's really important for you to step back a little and understand, again, there are things you cannot control, but you can control the way you react. And breathing exercises, as simple as that, very practical, but gives you, yeah, it's applicable before you even act. Think, and before you can even think, breathe, and just try to understand the surge of emotions that's coming in. Allison, let's break the silence on mental health. Mental health struggles are often stigmatized in military communities. How does your book encourage families to seek help and address these issues openly?
So in my book, I talk about my journey. I talk about what the spectrum of different reactions could be. One of my best friends, we met in Italy back in 2004. She has two children who are on the autistic spectrum. So I take some of her experiences and some of the things that I was there with her through, because each child is going to have a different reaction based off of their mental health, their developmental needs. So my book will take you through that. It'll tell you what the wide spectrum is, and then you get to decide what it's going to look like for your children, what you think. I try and give you the tools to help to teach you to predict what their behaviors could be. And then I try to give you the coping tools to deal with that when they have behaviors, when you have behaviors, when things are just too much. And then I try to give you, like, our spouses have deployment checklists. Their command is going to give them a checklist to make sure that they have their uniforms and socks and underwear and all the things that they need to have. Well, I also have a spouse's checklist with things that are important, like the banking numbers, who to get your car fixed, housing, mortgage, what money goes where, all of those things. But then the things that you don't think of, like the Disney Plus password, or
Wi-Fi password.
Wi-Fi, how to work the TV sound system, because my husband would always have like a TV and a sound bar and a video game and this and that, like plugged into this big box that I have to press all these buttons and choose. And I just wanted one thing. I just need to turn on Disney while I make dinner. So having that laid out and having that plan helps to prepare you for success, because you're not getting worked up. You're not having that emotional workup.
There's also this preparation that comes into play, and having these checklists really is going to be a big help, especially for family members that are going through the same setup as you. Allison, thank you so much for sharing that. As a wrap up, what is the most important message you want military families to take away from your book? And of course, where can our audience get a copy of your book?
Oh my goodness. The most important final message. You're not alone. Perspective influences your mindset. So deciding to have a positive perspective, no matter what happens, can change the trajectory of the entire experience, which can affect the entire house. So just deciding that you're going to enjoy it and you're going to be mindful is huge.
It is. So, Allison, it's a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for discussing your book with us, for sharing so many wonderful things.
Thank you so much. And you can get this book wherever books are sold. I know most people are getting it off of Amazon, but you can get it off of Balboa or Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold.
And I'm quite sure that they're going to be in for a treat. They should get a copy of your book. Really, really interesting. Should they want to get in touch with you, have questions, maybe ask for some advice, would there be any portal where they can reach you or they can interface with you?
Yes. Oh goodness, I have a lot of different a lot of different things. You can go to the emotional cycle of deployment.com, or you can go to mpsychology.org. That stands for Moving Mountain Psychology.
Well, thank you so much, Allison, for your time. I also want to give a shout out to our awesome viewers and listeners for joining us for this interview. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on the Book Connection Show. I'm Ray Walters. Join me next time as we explore the world of self-supported publishing, one indie author at a time.